Hello and welcome to game 26 of the TCEC Superfinal, 16th edition. We have Stockfish versus AllieStein in a Queen's Indian defense. This was a tactical slaughter here from Stockfish. The game started with d4 and now we have knight f6, c4, e6 and the anti-nimzo line with knight f3, trying to prevent bishop b4, pinning this knight on c3. And now we have b6, and this leads now into the Queen's Indian defense, where black wants to develop this bishop to the long diagonal, and usually white wants to do the same. And we have now g3, bishop b7, bishop g2, and now bishop b4 check, the Capablanca variation. But here after bishop d2, instead of taking this bishop, black now retreats to e7 and claims that this bishop is now misplaced because it blocks the queen's view, and d5 is not so strong now for white. This is the Riumin variation of the opening. And now the game continued with knight c3, castles, and here white's main move is castles, but in this one we have queen c2. We are still in the book, and this position has been played a couple of times. Ivanchuk has a nice win here against Sam Shankland in 2017. There Shankland developed this knight to c6, and his idea is to play d5, and then if white takes, then play knight b4 with tempo on the queen, and then take back on d5 with the knight, thus having this knight on d5 in a nice square, and also this bishop remains unblocked. In this one, however, we have a sideline with knight a6, and now we have a3, stopping the knight from getting to b4, and c5. This was black's idea. And of course now if white takes and plays into black's hands, then after knight c5 and b4, this knight can land in e4, and black is actually better in this position. So instead of taking on c5, we have d5 instead. But this looks like to lose a pawn for white, because after pawn takes, knight takes, knight takes, pawn takes, the bishop can take and black wins a pawn. However, it's not so simple, because actually here after pawn takes, white has a very nice move, knight g5, uncovering this bishop on g2, pinning this pawn on d5 to the bishop on b7. But after knight c7, it looks like black has adequate defense over d5 and can maintain the extra pawn, but no, because after knight takes on d5 and knight takes, pawn takes, and black can't recapture on d5 because of the mate on h7. For example, bishop takes, knight takes, and white mates on h7. So this is not possible. The pawn on d5 is untouchable. And it's not possible to drive that knight away from g5 first, because white has h4. And after pawn takes, white regains his piece because of the mate threat on h7. So it's not beneficial to open the h-file. Instead we have d6, but now this allows white to defend the pawn with e4, b5, and now f4. Very, very strong move. Stockfish wants to get in e5 and chase this knight away, and mate on h7. And there's not much black can do in this position. White will get in e5. So you have h6 attacking this knight, but as mentioned earlier, h4 is a very, very good response here. Pawn takes is just good for white, opens up the h-file, and black can get mated either on this diagonal, or if he plays g6 on this diagonal. So after h4 we have b4, a takes on b4, c takes on b4, and now finally Stockfish gets in e5. Trying to win a pawn, not so great, because of queen b6 and black gets counterplay. Stockfish goes for the king instead and plays e5. We have pawn takes, f takes, and now rook e8, making use of the fact that pawn takes on f6 comes with check, and after the king moves somewhere, this bishop can remove the knight and now there's no immediate mate on h7. However, if the pawn takes, the pressure on the h5 remains. However, after bishop takes on d5, black is okay-ish. This king on f1 is not so great. But instead of taking the knight, Stockfish played first king d1. Long castling doesn't work because of rook c8, winning the queen. King d1 is pretty good though, even though the white king looks very naked. White has a better position. Now the threat of taking on f6 and then mating on h7 is real. And Stockfish thought that the best defense here would be bishop c8. And after pawn takes on f6, AllieStein can take on g5. And after h takes on g5, bishop g4 check seems to be a good move. Where if the king moves, let's say to c1, this is given as best line, then queen c8 saves the game for black here. Blocking the c file with bishop c3 doesn't work because bishop f5, and this bishop is defended by the queen. And black seems to be okay in this position. Instead of queen c8, playing rook c8 doesn't work because now bishop c3 is good. There's no bishop f5 to guard against the mate on h7, and g6 doesn't work either because now after f takes on e7, white is threatening mate on h8 with the rook, and the queen is also hanging, so white would be winning. So after queen c8, bishop c3 doesn't seem to give white good choices. However, pawn takes on e7 is still better for white. So this bishop c8 line allows a bit more resistance, but white is still better. But instead of bishop c8, AllieStein finally thought that taking out the knight on g5 is needed. And now after h takes on g5, he played knight h5, giving back the piece. And his idea is good, because now if the rook takes on h5, then after g6, black has enough time to build a defense on the h file. For example, after rook h6 and king g7, black is now in time to play rook h8 and challenge their rook. And there are no problems on this diagonal, at least not immediate problems. But instead of taking this knight, Stockfish played first this very strong g6, not allowing g6 by black. And if now pawn takes on g6, then queen g6 is very strong. For example, bishop takes on d5, and now after e6, white is threatening mate in 2 with queen f7 check and rook h5. So the rook needs to guard f7, and now after rook h5, mate on h7 is threatened, and it looks like game over. But actually black has this crazy computer line with rook f1 check, where after bishop takes, there's bishop f3 check, and after bishop e2, black can take the rook and avoid the immediate mate. However, after queen takes, white is a piece up and has a winning position. So f takes on g6, not a great idea. Instead, AllieStein took on d5, and now Stockfish finally took the knight on h5. And now we have queen d7, g takes on f7 check, king takes. And in this position, AllieStein was expecting bishop d5 check, after which AllieStein intended to take, of course, and after queen f5 check, play bishop f6. And here actually taking the bishop is losing for white, because the white king is also not so safe, and if the e file opens up, then white is lost after this check on b3. King c1, rook c8, and this will lead to mate soon. The king can hide on b1, but there's queen d1 check, and after king a2, b3 check, king a3, and now white loses the rook. And after king b4, there's a5, and after king b5, rook b8 check, king a6, rook e6 check, and after king a7, and queen g1 check. Taking the rook doesn't really work because of queen b6 mating very soon after king c8, rook c6, king d7, and queen c7 mate. And even though after bishop f6, Instead of taking the bishop, white has good continuations like rook a5. After queen b3 check, king e2, rook e7 and bishop f4, the position is relatively equal. This white king doesn't feel so safe at all, and white is not much better. This would be probably just an equal game. However, after king takes on f7, instead of bishop takes here, Stockfish played an absolutely killing move, rook a6, and in this position Stockfish threatens mate in 10. He would like to take on d5 with check, and after queen takes, play queen g6 check, king g8, queen a7 check, king f7, and the point now is that rook f5 leads to mate. Bishop has to block, but the bishop is lost, this pawn is pinned, and after king e7, queen g7, white mates with rook d6 check, queen takes, rook c6 check, and then queen c7 mate. So this is what Stockfish has in mind after rook a6, and there isn't much black can do. If bishop takes here, then e6 wins the queen. AllieStein went for queen g4 check, and after king c1 took the rook. But now after bishop d5 check, white wins again, because after king f8, Stockfish has this other amazing tactical blow, which is rook h6. An amazing move. The point is that if the pawn takes the rook, then there's this other amazing move, queen f5 check, checking the king and attacking this queen while being undefended. And taking the queen is not possible, because then white mates with these two bishops. A very, very nice mate. So the queen is untouchable, but that means then that after king g7, the queen can take on h5, and black will get mated anyway. Instead of g takes on h6, if the queen leaves the h file, trying to save itself, well, then white mates with rook h8. So the queen has to stay there to guard h8, but then what can black do? Here AllieStein played g6, but after rook takes queen, taking the rook is not possible because of the same bishop h6 mate. Instead, AllieStein played rook c8, pinning the queen, but now Stockfish has rook h8 check and winning the rook on c8. And after this, the game didn't last it only for two more moves. We have this check and then mate on h8. A very nice tactical masterpiece here from Stockfish. Here are the current standings in the Superfinal. Stockfish leads by 2 points after 29 games. Only white wins. Stockfish managed to win 4 times, AllieStein twice. A very big fight going on between these two. Now, in the end of the video, I would like to thank to Adolf, Todor, Radu and Guilherme for their contributions. Thank you guys, and thanks everyone who is supporting my channel one way or the other. Please subscribe, like and share, and check out some of the other games. Thanks for watching and see you soon. Bye bye.